Welcome to another edition of Community Matters. I'm Jim Cameron, the program director of Darien TV 79. And as you, the faithful viewer, knows, this is a program where we talk to folks in the community that are making Darien such a special place to live. And we have two special guests today joining us on Zoom, Taylor Carter and Liz Geiger. They are the creators of a new podcast called Now We're Talking Darien. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank
So
you, Jim.
we over the years have talked to everybody in the Fifth Estate in Darien, the local newspapers and the virtual newspapers, et cetera. And you guys are opening a new frontier in terms of social media with this podcast that you've started. But let's first talk a little bit about you. Your face should be familiar to faithful viewers of TV 79. Taylor, you serve on the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
And Liz, you are, I believe, the chair of the Architecture Review Board. Is that correct?
Yep, but no one knows
Great.
that or what that does. So that's okay, Jim. No one will know me.
That's a whole other program that we're going to do. But let's talk a little bit about your background. Taylor, tell us about what brought you to Darien and how long you've been here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was actually born in Connecticut, but came back here about 10 years ago with my husband from New York City, with our new second born child. And we've since had two more. So we have four kids. They're in middle school and Ox Ridge Elementary right now. I used to work in finance and sales and trading and fixed income at Morgan Stanley and then Lehman through the bankruptcy and stayed at Barclays for a while, and then came home with my kids in 2012 and decided to get involved. So I've been on the RTM here and a bunch of other, subcommittees and groups, and now I'm on the Board of Finance.
Great. And Liz, what's your background?
I was attracted to Darien. Hi, everyone. I was attracted to Darien like many people for the same reasons. Good commute to the city. I was working in the city. My husband lived out in New Canaan at the time. So I met him, got married, moved out here and wanted, a life with good schools, easy commute, beach access. And I quickly got involved. I had a small business in town and met some players that were interested in governance and said, you should try getting involved too. You might like it. And here I am now, 8 years later.
Great. Well, this definitely is a town of volunteers who are active in the governance and direction of the town. But let's talk about your latest project, which is a podcast. And I think for the benefit of our viewers who don't know, we should talk about what is a podcast.
Liz, you want to take that one?
Well, it's funny you said that, Jim. Earlier, you alluded to social media, podcast being a new media format of social media. And I find that funny because one of the goals Taylor and I had when starting this is to get away from these social media platforms, these headlines and short tweets and posts, and give people a form of long form conversation. And in this world of, busy moms, dads, everyone's, we're doing a lot these days. We wanted to give people another alternative medium to live in. So a podcast is basically an audio. It's like a video interview, but without the video.
We call that radio in the old world, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a digital audio file. It's like a radio show that's taped and then put out for digital consumption on your, phone or computer or wherever you want to hear it.
And why did you feel that the Darien needed its own podcast? Taylor.
Liz alluded to it. Oh, sorry. I think I'm on delay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, you're fine. You're good.
Jim, can you hear me? Okay.
I hear you. Yeah.
Liz alluded to it. I think COVID was difficult, obviously, on everyone. And there was a lot of stress in the community and across the world, really. But sitting behind a computer and really having all of our social interactions behind a computer screen, I think led to a lot of negativity and divisiveness, and everything was it felt like everything was just getting reduced to a tweet or a headline. And we needed to get back to longer form conversation and understand each other again, because I really believe that there's so many great people, like you said, volunteering in this community and making it great. And we're all trying to do good. And even if we don't agree with each other, we need to hear each other. So I think it was a neat opportunity to have these conversations.
Great. And how long is each show, and how often do they come out?
Well, we do them weekly for now, Jim, until we get so exhausted that we can't keep up that record. We're coming out strong weekly because we got a lot of people we want to talk to. And then we try to aim for about 45-minute episodes, right, Taylor?
Yeah. I mean, the David Genovese interview went kind of long, but we're shooting for 45 minutes.
And where do people find this podcast?
Anywhere people normally get their podcasts. So Apple Podcast is a pretty easy, platform to find on any phone, I think, especially an Apple phone, iPhone, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, Google. We just added a few more like iHeartRadio, like some other platforms I'm not real familiar with, but I think there's like 9 different platforms that have us now. So.
And Jim, I think to jump in there, that's the appeal. You go back to like, what is a podcast? Why a podcast? It's people accessing information on a platform that they are comfortable with and listening to it in a place, in a time that they can access that information, that they're ready to hear that information. So for me as a busy mom, sometimes for me, that's driving in my car and throwing my headphones on. For other people, it's on a walk on a Saturday, via Google Podcasts, or other people it's on Spotify on 9 p.m. in bed at nighttime. So that was kind of the goal, is to really reach a full breadth of audience when it's best to reach them on their time.
And who have you had as guests so far?
Well, going in order, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget anybody. We've had Jamie Stevenson, our first selectman, Susan Schultz, editor of the Darien Times, David Genovese, Bob Mazza and his crew from the Sugar Bowl, Chief Anderson and Captain Marin from the police department. And just the other day, we had Pastor Gary Morello from Norotan Presbyterian Church.
So what kind of guests are you looking for the show?
Anyone that we honestly are excited to talk to that is important to Darien residents or future Darien residents or previous Darien residents, people that make this community so special. And it really runs the gamut, like, from, our volunteers and our government to, our like religious leaders and small business owners, arts. We're interested in talking to people doing arts type things. I mean, it could be anybody.
And Jim, we really want to hit the whole gamut, everything from like, philanthropy to art, to governance, to sports, to social media, to you. We wanted to do media. We tried to get Jim on here. He's a hard one to pin down, but I mean, that's another perspective.
Still on our list, Jim.
I know. Someone you're
Be a very short show.
It's a short show. Jim, we could talk to you for hours. Maybe that's the problem, to bring it down to 45 minutes.
Do you have a sense of who is listening? Do you have any metrics on how many listeners you have?
We do. We're just getting used to, kind of mining that data. But the best feedback, I mean, between booking and prepping and executing these interviews and then trying to manage the social media to promote it, we haven't spent a ton of time looking at the data, but we're hearing really great things. Like every time we go out in the community, we're bumping into people who are like, I heard the podcast, and that feels great. So it's off to a good start.
Jim, if you've got advice for us on other ways to broaden our audience and how to expand our target, we are all ears.
Well, you're going to be on TV 79, which has a huge audience, and
we're going to explode.
That'll help spread the word. And for our listeners' benefit, we're going to put a slide at the end that has information about where to find this new podcast called Now We're Talking Darien. And our guests today are Liz Geiger and Taylor Carter, who are the creators and co-hosts of the program. Are you hoping to generate enough of an audience that you can have advertising as well, too?
Maybe I'll let Taylor jump on. I can't even get that far, Jim. I'm trying to figure out who we're going to book for this Wednesday. So, Taylor,
Exactly.
do you have thoughts on that yet?
I mean, sure, we're interested in it. We've invested a bunch of money in, getting this up and running. It would be great to recoup some of that. And I think it would be good for, local businesses or anyone who's looking to access the Darien audience, to talk. So yeah, we're open to it. We haven't done it yet.
Okay. And where do you see the show going from here? We talked a little bit about the diverse kinds of guests that you want, but there are only 20,000 people in town. So at some point you're going to run out of interviewing everybody. Is this the Andy Warhol, everybody's famous for 15 minutes type of adventure?
Jim, it's funny. it surprises me every time we think. Taylor and I've had the same thought, if we run out of people we want to interview, then, maybe this has run its length. But the funny thing is, every week we find a new thing that comes up, another person in town doing something new that week. So when one issue may tire, a new thing arises. That's the great thing about Darien. And that kind of brings us back to why we started this. Every time we turn around, there's someone doing something great here, and we want to talk about it. So maybe it will tire. I don't think a town like Darien, the place that keeps evolving and growing and getting better, I don't really see that happening. But I mean, maybe people will tire of us. I don't know. Maybe Taylor and I will want to retire to Florida. I mean, but I don't. Taylor, what do you think?
I think it was a great answer.
There are a lot of people who have moved to Darien in the last year, and I get the sense that they're kind of, feeling their way around, and they know where Palmer's is and they know where the Sugar Bowl is, but they're still kind of getting involved in the community. I mean, we've lived here for 20, 30 years now, and it takes a little time. So is it your hope that this is going to be a way of helping ease people into being part of the Darien community?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think as a new resident 10 years ago, I would have loved to have something like this to get to know more about the residents and the leaders in our community. So yeah, I do hope that, people will latch onto it. I think we're going to have to do a good job of advertising it so they know about it. But yeah, I think it would be really neat. I know I would have enjoyed it, back then.
I think the first time I met you, Taylor, was at the League of Women Voters.
That's right.
When you had just arrived in town, and I was the token male member of the League of Women Voters. So you kind of dove in, feet first. And Liz, you were not on the RTM as Taylor was, but you got involved with the Architecture Review Board. Let's talk just a little bit about volunteerism in this town, because it is definitely a community that taps the expertise, the experience, the intellectual prowess of people that live in town. Why do you think volunteerism is important in Darien? Either one of you can take that jump ball.
I mean, I find volunteerism just one of my core values in general, how I grew up. I think maybe like-minded attract like-minded people. So here in Darien, you got similar people coming together. For me personally, Taylor can talk to it. I had a good career, not a great, I think Taylor probably did better in her career than me, but I had a good career, but then, I had to kind of draw back from that and raise kids, but I didn't want to I want to keep my foot in the door. I want to be active. I want to be part of a community. And the way I see that, especially in a town like Darien, is there's so much opportunity for it. And so I'm not one to sit on the sidelines and kind of just make judgments. I like to get involved and raise my hand and say, okay, I'll step up. Why not? I think that's what attracted Taylor and me to each other. I don't know, Taylor, what do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I was actually talking to my mom about the podcast the other day and saying how much I love this, because there is just so much pride here, in the community, and it's not exclusionary. Like, it's not only, the old crew. If you've been here, if you grew up here, that you're, cool and everybody else is an outsider. Like, you can be a part of this team the minute you get here. If you want to dive in and join us, like, we put on the blue shirts and arms around each other, and everybody's like pulling in the same direction. And it's a great feeling. Like, I've never felt like the excitement and the pride as I have doing this podcast. And I love promoting that positivity and teamwork and the sense of community. I have to think that's attractive to, homeowners, if they can get even just a sniff of that. It's such a fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it's not a town where people kind of move in, take, dad or mom takes the train to the city every day. The kids go to school, they go to the beach, and they pay their taxes, and that's it. It really is a town that it not only welcomes, it encourages people to get involved with the governance of the town. And Taylor, how long have you been on the Board of Finance now?
I was elected to Board of Finance in the fall of 19, so 2 years.
And that's an elected position.
We're coming up on 2 years. Yes.
Right.
Yep. I was on the RTM from 16 to 19, and then 19 on the Board of Finance.
Right. And Liz, how long have you been on the ARB?
I've been on the ARB, Jim, since for about 7 years. I think I've chaired it now for 5 or 6. And you brought up a great point a second ago, Jim, that like you asked, why you think people are so inclined to volunteer here in Darien. And you kind of actually, in your own way, said this, like Darien it gives such opportunity to volunteer. We have so many groups and so many so many subgroups, from moms groups to dad groups to sports groups here to different branches of our governance. Like it's like to not get involved is almost difficult too. PTO with there's so much opportunity created here because you've got this pool of leaders of talent here. So it makes it easy to raise your hand and say, sure, I'll do it too.
Right. What are your thoughts? We're talking with Liz Geiger and Taylor Carter, who are the co-creators and hosts of the new podcast called Now We're Talking Darien. You mentioned that we have, I think we're pretty close to emerging from a year of isolation and the pandemic and COVID. What do you see moving forward? How do you think the town might change as a result of that experience? Any thoughts on that?
That's prolific. I got to let Taylor take that one.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I will say that the efficiency of the Zoom meeting has been realized. Like we're getting a lot more participation because more people can be on a Zoom call than physically present for a meeting. So that, could be a tool we use more going forward. Obviously our schools have learned a lot, right? Like we've learned how to be digital. I think we've improved a lot. Be honest, I wasn't real pleased with the way it was going in the beginning of the year, but they've definitely improved that. That's a great skill to have. So, everyone has learned a lot. I think everyone's really ready to come outside again and smile at each other and see that smile. And, I don't know. I'm just hoping we're all going to get back to quote normal again very soon.
And people are going to get out for walks now, Jim, and they're going to put in those earphones and they're going to say, hey, I need a good podcast to listen to.
That's right.
And then they're going to have remembered this Channel 79 interview with Jim Cameron and think, now we're talking, Darien.
Well, have we got a podcast for you? Yeah. Again, I'll put the information about where to find this exciting new podcast. Now We're Talking Darien in the closing credits. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up and let you get back to your busy days?
I just want to say thank you, first of all, so much for having us. That was really sweet. And, you're doing the same thing that we're doing, right? Trying to promote all the great members of this community. So thank you for the work that you do and for taping all of our boring long meetings. Thank you so much. One last thing about the podcast that's interesting is Liz has been a genius with social media and has been posting pictures and videos to go with the podcast, because the podcast is just audio, but she's had pictures and videos up on Instagram and Facebook, and it's NWT Darien. And they're just so worth it. It brings the podcast to life. So if anybody wants to check that out, it's really cool.
Cool.
By the way, that's one social media, reject right there, praising someone who's just as bad. Like Taylor doesn't know what she's doing. I don't know what I'm doing on social media, but we're throwing stuff out there, Jim.
I'm very impressed though.
Well, have you actually thought of doing a video podcast?
These are faces for podcasting here. We're going to stick to a medium that's a little more comfortable.
I'm still trying to get the microphones to stop buzzing.
I was accused once of having the perfect face for radio. So
oh my God.
That's why I stayed behind the microphone and not in front of the camera as much as we did.
That's our big joke too. Yep.
Liz Geiger.
It's hard, Jim, to be in front of the video too. And also, there's enough to worry about even on just radio or on the podcast, the different elements. To throw in a video too is even more complex. But I think it's guilt-free. When you just have the earphones, you can do a lot more and you don't feel like you have to be strapped to something and looking at it, right? You can move and kind of multitask. So podcasting works for us for now until we retire.
Well, if our viewers and listeners have any ideas, they can reach out to you and share them with future guests or topics for discussion.
Absolutely. There's an email address on our website, nwtdarien@gmail.com. And, we'd love to hear feedback, things you'd love to hear, people you'd love to hear from. criticism, very welcome. So yeah, please.
Not too much criticism though. Let's go easy on that. Wait, Jim, do you have any advice for us of someone you would like to hear?
I think you're just doing a great job. I'm not here to offer advice. I'm just here to ask the dumb questions on behalf of my audience and share information. So we'll save my opinions to when you run out of every other guest and have to actually sit down and want to interview me. But that'll be a whole other conversation.
You're on the short list.
Later.
Yeah,
Right.
Look out. We're coming for Jim Cameron at some point here. Look out, 79.
Okay. Liz Geiger and Taylor Carter, the co-creators and hosts of Now We're Talking Darien. Thank you both for joining us today on the program.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Jim.
And thank you for watching another edition of Community Matters.